Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my hobby channel. It's been a while since I've posted a video. I had hoped to be doing some awesome kit bashing with my Empire of Man. I went out and bought the flagellants, the Empire Greatswords and Empire Archers and collected those the other weekend, and then my health took a nosedive. So I've got a whole stash of Empire boxes and various other bits and pieces waiting there to be kit bashed, and I wasn't able to do anything with them at all. I don't want to make a fuss, but it's a physical injury is probably the best way of putting it. Doctor's orders are nothing strenuous until I get surgery. So I'll probably have to wind back the YouTube videos for a while. I still have my mental health to contend with, but now I've got this additional physical problem. It's annoying and it's unfortunate, and it has changed the direction that my next couple of videos were going in. So instead, I carried on working on some of the skeletons that I'd featured in my previous video. I've done a little bit of painting from my sickbed, and I also managed to grab a bigger box of the Warlords of Erehwon skeletons, the Children of the Hydra's Teeth, which I've been kit bashing into different undead units to use in some different games. A lot of the skeletons that I featured in my last video have now been painted and based, and they just need some more detailing and a little bit of weathering. We've got the Warlords of Erehwon, or Warlords of Nowhere, skeletons there. The very classic kind of Jason and the Argonaut skeleton warriors there, and I've been painting those up and weathering the shields with a copper oxide. I also put together some skeleton infantry from Oathmark, and I tried to give these a bit of a Celtic vibe. Again, weathering them up with, I think it's an old tub of vile green that I've got from Citadel Miniatures that I was using. Yes, there it is, a really old pot of vile green that I keep having to reconstitute. But that is just the most awesome colour. If any of you know of a decent equivalent, either by another manufacturer or a similar paint that Games Workshop are doing, please drop me a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So having done a little bit of painting on those, I also wanted to take a look at these mantic skeletons here. I think they're revenants. I'm a bit rusty on Kings of War, but I bought those a while ago, didn't actually feature them in my previous video, so I'm going to do a quick scale comparison. And then we've got some Tomb Kings stuff that I converted and kit bashed years ago. This is a debadged chariot, which is now in need of some TLC and some restoration. So that's part of a future project. I've also got these Grenadier undead war mammoths, which did feature in my modelling and painting fantasy figures book, making a brief appearance near the end of the book where I talk about basing your miniatures. And they are now in desperate need of some TLC. I probably want to split those and maybe split these as well. These were some undead woolly mammoth conversions that I was doing. I don't know if I like them, but we'll take a look at those later on in the video. I want to use some mammoths in my Tomb Kings army and some of these undead mammoths with my fantasy historical mashup, the kind of thing that I'll be playing perhaps with never mind the Bill Hooks Fantasia rules. The eagle-eyed among you might also see some Army of the Dead figures here, and I've used a few skeletons there to try and kit bash some more Army of the Dead that are a little bit less blocky and chunky than the actual official miniatures. These are all plastics, and this is a rescue job that I'm doing on a trade-in that I purchased from my local hobby store. Painting wise, they're pretty respectable, but I wanted to put them all on skull bases, so I've been crushing up my own resin skull bases that I hadn't used, and kit bashing a different look and feel for these Middle Earth miniatures. So that's a project I've got on the go. And also for Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth, I've kitbashed these Warlords of Erehwon skeleton. That's why I went out and got the Children of the Hydra's Teeth box. So I've been kitbashing the bodies of those skeletons with the weapon arms and bows and arrows from the skeleton infantry from the Oathmark range. I've also stumbled across this lovely three-headed dog, Cerberus or something. So here we have a model of Cerberus from Foundry, the three-headed dog. Again, I featured that in my modelling and painting fantasy figures book, but I actually want to rebase that to give more of a classic Greek mythology feel to my undead army. And there we go. Took a while to find him, but on page 129, that is Cerberus. Yeah. In addition to all of that, I've got some Reaper metals and here as well. These are wraiths or reapers from Reaper Mini. I've also got some scarecrows from Ralpatha, and we'll be taking a look at those a bit later on in this video. And then there's some various bits and pieces of old GW plastics and some very old GW skeletons that might have some newer heads on them, but I think certainly the bow arms there, and I think the bodies too, are the first examples of the first plastic skeletons that Games Workshop did, and they're in need of some TLC and restoration. So in this video, at least, I thought I'd wrap up a few loose ends and do a project update and cobble together some bits and pieces that I managed to record before my diagnosis and doctor's orders to take it easy. So the first thing I did was an unboxing of the Skeleton Hosts box, and I'll cut to that now. Now, before I tear off the cellophane, I just wanted to apologise for the change of surroundings. I can't actually do this unboxing video in my hobby room because of the noise the neighbours were making. Now, if any of you have been following my channel, you'll know that I've already had to put up with about 12 weeks worth of noise from next door whilst they gutted the property and refurbished the place. And the noise was so bad, I ended up moving my hobby room to the back of my house, which took me several weeks. And that was to give me a little bit more peace and quiet. Well, today the neighbours are outside with a digger tearing up the ground, and I think turning their garden into a bigger driveway. So I'm in the lounge looking at this box over my coffee table. I really do want to get it cut open and have a look inside so that I can start building and working these models into my existing armies. Here we go. Get the knife in. Now, because there are 90 skeletons in this, and you get 6 skeletons on a sprue, I'm actually expecting to find 15 sprues, some water slide decals, and a metal figure in here. And there are the water slide transfers. I do actually quite like these. I tend not to use transfers whenever I buy miniatures. I prefer to hand paint my shields, but I am actually tempted perhaps to use some of these. If not on these plastics, then I might end up using some on some of my old Citadel miniatures. Who knows? And here is the Metal Necromancer, and that's quite a nice sculpt, that one. In fact, I like that model enough to consider using him in my Tomb King's army. Brilliant. That was the box, not me. Honest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15. 15 sprues. And I have actually featured this sprue in a previous video, so I'm not going to labour the point. I just wanted to do this unboxing so that I could crack on with building some models and show you some kit bashing. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the miniatures, and the first thing I wanted to show you was this one, which I've left the surface of the base exposed there, so you can see how I've glued this skeleton on top of a regular slotter base. This isn't a GW slot base, this is a cheaper alternative, and I've filled it with some milliput leftover modelling putty, and I've also left the bar in place between the feet because that helps to add some rigidity to the skeleton, which otherwise would be quite delicate. So I've then given all the models a coat of I think this is Vallejo earth texture. It's like a textured paint, which or Vallejo mud, and it's pretty cool. I use that quite a lot now, and I've built that up to hide the bar between the feet, but also being careful not to actually go over the feet. So if I bring in an older Haldir that I never finished painting, but you can see back in the day how I was using sand and gravel for the bases. I just used to pop that down. You can do that if you want. Drop some ink on it after the glue has dried, and then give it a dry brush, a bleach bone or something, and that would do. I never actually got this one finished, but I've dug this model out so I can do a scale comparison here and show you the Warlords of Erehwon skeletons that I'm using for my Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings. I think this is a pretty good fit. I've chosen a Wargames Atlantic base from their general accoutrement range because that is very much like the shield that Boromir was holding, and it also frees up the shields that come, I think, 3 on a sprue. You've got 6 skeletons and you only get 3 of these shields on a sprue. You get 3 of a different design, but I want to use these shields for my Billhook's Fantasia skeletons, so by not using them on this warband, I'm freeing up some extra shields for use with the regiments that I'm building for my fantasy and historical mashup. So these I plan to use in Lord of the Rings, but I'll also just bring in a crewman from Frostgrave, and you can see again the scale is good, so I should be able to use them in Frostgrave as well. So I've got this skeleton warband, and whilst building the miniatures, I've made some choices about the poses and how I assemble them. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the things I've been doing is replicating poses, because you find this in the Middle-earth plastics that you buy from Games Workshop, and by echoing the aesthetic of the plastic models, I'm producing a warband that I think fits in better. Also, some of the decisions I make may come down to the fact that I've been sculpting miniatures that have gone into production, and again, I like the look and the aesthetic that's created by some of the production requirements or restrictions. One of the things that you often find with a metal or resin miniature, particularly if it's a single piece model, is that various different parts of the model are connected, and this is to allow resin or metal to flow through the mold. Now if we look at this skeleton here that I've created, and I bring in a metal skeleton from Foundry, you'll hopefully see what I'm alluding to. Although there is a gap there between the top of the skull and the sword, the chances are that when this was produced there might have been a little feed between the two, which I've cleaned off, or there could have been a little feed between the tip of the sword and the top of the hand, and I've kind of tried to emulate that with this plastic model here, although I've chosen to glue the sword to the top of the head because that adds a bit more rigidity. Now if I bring in this old Citadel miniature, you can see what I mean, how the sword goes across the body there, and that will help the metal flow into all parts of the banner pole. And I've tried to do a similar thing here with this plastic, although the pose is different. I've actually fed the tip of the sword into the top of the banner pole. And that not only adds strength to the top of the model, so that if I catch that on the gaming table, it hopefully won't snap, but it also echoes the kind of look that you get with miniatures that have been cast in metal. Now I've got two banner bearers here, so I've built them both using the same body parts to create a similar pose, and then I've added a bit of variation just by moving the position of the arm and choosing a different head. And that's another technique that's illustrated by these two models here. Again, exactly the same pose. They've got different heads glued to them. I particularly like that one with the dislocated jaw that you get from the Warlords of Erehwon skeletons box. The shields again are Wargames Atlantic, as previously explained, and these have been kit bashed with weapon arms from the Oathmark skeleton infantry. And what I've done here is basically create a model with exactly the same parts and in exactly the same pose, except for the weapon hand. And that allows you to add a little variety to individual miniatures without destroying the overall aesthetic that you're trying to create with the warband. And then if I just show you this captain figure here, you can see how I've just glued the bottom of the bow onto the top of the leg there. And again, that helps provide support and stability to the model, but also emulates the type of pose that you would typically find in a miniature that's been cast from metal or resin. Now, as I've shown in my previous video, I think these skeletons are a little bit on the small side to be used as vampire counts or tomb kings, and that's why I've not bothered to go down that route with either the Oathmark or the Warlord Games undead. In my previous video, lurking in the background, you may have seen these, which are mantic skeletons. They're quite heavily armored. I think these are called revenants or something, and I'm going to be using these as my sort of crack troops or grave guard or whatever in my Bill Hook's Fantasia. I'll just bring in a Games Workshop skeleton. So again, you can see that whilst the bones, the feet, the hands, all that kind of thing are a little bit chunkier than some of the other third-party skeletons, I still think these miniatures from Mantic are a little bit slender to fit well in an army that's made from Games Workshop Warhammer miniatures. And if I just bring in a little base that I'm playing around with at the moment, this is an old Ralpartha skeleton from about 1975 or 76. You can see how skinny that is side on, but the proportions are pretty good there to fit with the Mantic skeletons that I've got here. And just so you can see there, they do fit quite nicely with the classic skeletons that I'm building there. They look like a more heavily armed unit. So I will be using some Mantic skeletons as my kind of elite troops in my undead army there for Bill Hook's Fantasia. Whilst I'm here, I couldn't resist bringing in this zombie. I think this is a perisculpt, and this is actually the very first Citadel miniature that I ever bought way back in the early to mid 1980s. And scale-wise, again, I think they're pretty good. If you were looking to build an old Hammer army, I mean, I've still got the 3rd edition rule books for Warhammer, and I will be creating some 3rd edition Warhammer units so that I can still play that. But it's a good fit with some of the very early pre-slaughter Citadels, so it's always an option there. And again, if I just mention briefly about the poses that I've created with these miniatures, you can see they're a bit more sort of all over the place. So I'm building a unit which is a horde of skeletons, and they're multi-based, they're not based individually, and they don't need to fit the aesthetic of any other game. I'm a little less concerned about how I build these models, and I've just kind of gone to town with those. And that's a point I can illustrate again with these skeletons, which are all from the Oathmark range. But generally speaking, I want these to look more like a mass of wild and undisciplined undead. And just very briefly, while we're on the subject of Lord of the Rings, I wanted to take a quick look at these kit-bashed and converted miniatures that I'm using here. I'm not entirely convinced that this is the right way to go, but I just feel that the Army of the Dead models are quite blocky. They're quite solid. I wanted to try and create a looser, more ethereal feel. Now, as I said, I'm not entirely convinced by these. I need to paint them up and see how they look, but I've just basically squashed out some green stuff mixed with a little bit of milliput, which is why it's fairly rigid. Now it's dry. And I've cut that and pulled that into sort of wisps of fabric that could also perhaps be a little bit of ethereal mist. And I'm just hoping that when these are painted the kind of vibrant green that I do my ghostly miniatures, like this Frostgrave Ghost Archipelago crewman, or this Slimer Ghost here, which I used as a painting example in my sci-fi modelling book, I'm hoping these skeletons will fit in nicely with the revamped Army of the Dead. Whilst the jury is still out on some of the Middle-earth kit bashing that I'm doing, I do have some old Tomb Kings models that I need to restore and repair. This one, I remember finishing this, and it did actually, I was very pleased with it. I think that arm goes up there like that. So I will probably restore this and get this one into my Tomb King's army, even though I've taken the Tomb King badges off. I also did some converting on the horses. I don't know if you can see, and I'll probably do that with my Tomb King's army proper when I start building those models. Obviously, this has suffered, I don't know, 15, 20 years of being bounced around in the bottom of a box, and it's traveled several thousand miles. This is one of the models that has unfortunately suffered as a result of that, but I still have it, and I can still, whoops, I can still hopefully return this to its former glory and get some gaming out of it. And the same also applies for this eclectic collection of old metal miniatures that I've got from Reaper Mini, Ralpartha or Grenadier. This is a ghost that I've had again since I was a teenager. Scale wise, it still works and fits quite well with Warhammer the Old World, so it could perhaps end up as a spirit host. Here is a Reaper Mini. This is a metal, and size wise I think it fits. It's slightly bigger, it's probably 32mm. Again, potentially that may end up on a spirit host base in my Vampire Counts army. I do love these old Ralpartha Scarecrow as well. Size wise they fit, they're going to look good in a Vampire Counts army. Now, I did start painting these, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, and you can see how chipped and battered and bashed they are. So they'll be part of a restoration project. Whether or not I paint them up as Scarecrow like this, or whether or not I paint them up in a ethereal ghostly green and put them in a spirit host unit, I haven't decided yet, but that's more for my Vampire Counts. Now, this miniature is still available from Reaper. And although he has a slight kind of samurai look about him, I know that there's a lot of, I don't know, is it Wolves of the Sea or God knows what I'm seeing now with the Old World, and it just piqued my curiosity, that model, and I thought, yeah, it's a nice model, that one, and that might end up in my Chaos army. But anyway, I've got this, I think this is a Grenadier Dracula. Not my favourite sculpt, it has to be said, but I want to give the model an opportunity to shine, because of course it is Dracula dissolving into mist. Lastly, I've got these three. I haven't glued them into the bases yet. They are Reaper Mini and they come on slots. And I don't know why I didn't actually push that one in further. But they are wraiths or something, narco wraiths, or so, I can't remember what they're called now. But I bought these at one point. I did have a really big Keltos army, and I had some lovely Keltos undead that had these very similar stylized sickles and scythes and all sorts, and I ended up having to sell that, which I regret deeply now. And all these are Reaper Mini, they're not Keltos miniatures. They are the only reminder that I have of that huge undead army that that I collected, you know, sort of 20 odd years ago. So I will be basing those. I think that one fits better, sort of that way. So, but again, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to include these into my vampire counts, but I will. I've also got two black coaches that I'm in the middle of restoring. I have got the pole at the back that goes on the back with the half a skeleton on it, and I have got the plumes for the foreheads of the horses in a bag somewhere separately, but rather annoyingly I keep finding it and putting it down and finding it and putting it down. And losing it for a while and then finding it again, so it's not with these, but I've already started building and restoring this black coach, complete with a coffin and the lid. I think this other one is missing the coffin, and I haven't decided whether I will have two black coaches in my Vampire Counts army, or whether this black coach will be painted ethereal green and go in amongst my spirit hosts. I've also got two versions of these skeleton chariots from Wargames Foundry, and various different crew that they come with. I'm basing these up, hopefully for use in my vampire counts. So they were a bit fiddly to build. It did take a while, but I think they look pretty good. And they fit alongside the GW plastics very nicely. And the scale of the crew as well is good. And the last chariot that I'm working on from Wargames Foundry is this phenomenal beast here. Absolutely wonderful, very old hammer in style. There's a lot going on here, a lot to fit on. I absolutely love this model though. It really does sing early 90s Citadel to me. I'm not sure what I would use that as in my Vampire Counts army, but again, just a scale comparison there. It's a big hefty chariot, but looks good. And then we just check the scale of the crew as well. They fit really nicely with GW plastics. And finally, that brings me to my collection of Grenadier undead war mammoths. Now, obviously these have been heavily converted. Some of them were bought in bits and pieces, which is why I never made them or built them as complete models and examples of the original. These I also converted originally to go in my Keltos army, but these were the war mammoths that had the stone thrower on the back. These had a howdah, I think, with a couple of skeleton archers in. All of those bits and pieces have long since gone. I ended up selling those on eBay, but I like this version because of the sort of gold or brass or steel armor around the ankles. I ended up creating war mammoths here out of these, and that's kind of left me a little bit stuck. I wasn't sure what to do with them. The riders are actually Foundry metal skeletons, but they're taking a bit of a hammering. I sculpted these sort of flint spears for the battle forge and used those in a conversion, but they keep catching on things and I'm snapping the arms of the metal Foundry riders, so I need to deal with that issue. So my current thinking is, because I'm struggling to justify keeping these models as they are, I will probably take one model from each base to convert up for my Tomb Kings, or perhaps use one model here for my Tomb Kings as a War Sphinx that needs to go on a 60 by 100 base, and perhaps take a Mammoth here and include that in my Vampire Counts army. And hopefully this little setup here gets across the idea that I have in mind, because the element of the army that I'm creating here with more of a Celtic vibe is still an army that I want to use in combination with the more Mediterranean or North African looking army that I've got here. So I've used a bit of blue tack just to stick that head back on there, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of the kind of army that I'm wanting to build for the Bill Hooks Fantasia. And then with a model like this, which needs some restoration, I do still have the original plastic skeleton warriors that I converted as riders, so I will probably reinstate one of those chaps, and again do the same for this mammoth miniature here, and perhaps get that in my Vampire Counts army. I've got a bit of touching up to do possibly on these models, and again, as I said, I need to strip off that snow and swap the riders, but that should be a fun little project. As I explained at the beginning of this video, I wasn't able to do the unboxing and kit bashing Empire videos that I'd hoped to do due to developments in my health. So instead, I thought I'd tie up the loose ends that I had with Tomb Kings, Vampire Counts, and my, never mind the Bill Hooks Fantasia undead army. Having done that, I've now got these beauties that I need to unbox. I've already done the unboxing videos for them and had a quick look at the sprues, but I want to take a closer look and do some kit bashing. And finally, in other hobby news, anyone who followed my progress in previous videos or saw some of the posts that I put on Facebook and Instagram will recognize that this is Baldwin the Pious, and he's a prototype giant that I sculpted for my Bretonnian Old World army. The first resin versions of Baldwin will be shipping next week. That's the second week in February 2025 for those of you who find this video later on. After the pre-orders have shipped, the Battle Forge, or Andy at the Battle Forge, tells me that Baldwin will then be back in stock and available to order from the Battle Forge website. So exciting times there. I'm expecting to get my resin version of Baldwin early next week, and I will be able to do some building and painting videos of the resin model. So that's it. That's all the hobby news that I have. I will now cut to the outro that I recorded a little while ago. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please smash that like button. Please also feel free to leave a comment. It's always good to hear from you, especially if you're working on similar projects. But please keep your comments kind and respectful. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do. The likes, the subscriptions, the comments all help to keep the algorithms promoting what I do. As always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.